Let me tell you about a couple who did everything right. She's in marketing, pulling in $62,000 a year. He works in IT, making 71. Together, they're bringing home $133,000 annually. That puts them comfortably in the top quarter of all American households. By every measure, they should be thriving. They should be maxing out their 401ks, taking real vacations, sleeping well at night, knowing they've built something solid. Instead, they're stressed. They're anxious. They're arguing about money on a Tuesday evening after both of them have already worked 10-hour days. When their car broke down last month, they had to put the repair on a credit card because they didn't have the cash sitting there. These are two educated, hardworking professionals making six figures combined, and they are one bad month away from real trouble. If you've ever looked at your bank account and thought, we make too much money to feel this scared, then stay with me, because what I'm about to walk you through is going to reframe everything you think you know about two-income households, financial security, and the quiet trap that millions of families are sitting inside of right now without even realizing it. The name for what I'm describing is the two-income trap. The term was coined not by a financial influencer or a podcast host, but by Elizabeth Warren back in 2003 when she was still a Harvard bankruptcy law professor. She and her daughter co-authored an entire book on this subject after studying more than 2,000 families who had filed for bankruptcy. And what they uncovered wasn't what anyone expected. Two-income families were actually more likely to file for bankruptcy than single-income families. Not less likely, more. People working twice as hard, bringing home two paychecks, doing exactly what the modern economy told them to do, and they were ending up financially destroyed at higher rates than households with one earner. That's not a coincidence, that's a pattern, and patterns have causes. To understand the cause, you have to go back about 50 years. In 1970, around 43% of women participated in the workforce. The typical middle-class family ran on one income, usually the father's, while the mother managed the home. And here's the part that most people completely miss when they look back at that era. That one income was genuinely enough, not barely enough. Actually enough. A median single-income family in 1970 could afford a median-priced home on roughly 25% of their earnings. They could cover healthcare, a car, groceries, and still put something away at the end of the month. They had breathing room. They had margin. And critically, they had something that we've almost completely lost today, a backup plan. If the primary earner got sick or lost their job, the stay-at-home parent could enter the workforce. That second potential income wasn't being used. It was being saved. It was an emergency reserve, a financial insurance policy sitting quietly in the background, ready to be activated if life went sideways. Now think about what happened over the next 5 decades. Female workforce participation climbed steadily. By the time you reach today, more than 60% of married couples with children have both parents working full-time. The backup plan got activated, not because of some emergency, but because the cost of simply living a middle-class life grew so fast that families needed to pull that reserve just to stay in place. And here's the brutal irony. The moment everyone activated their backup plan at the same time, it stopped being a backup. It became the baseline requirement. And then the baseline itself got more expensive because everyone now had two incomes to spend. Think about housing. In 1970, adjusted for today's dollars, the median home price was around $200,000. Today, it's over $400,000. That's not just inflation, that's a bidding war. When two-income families became the norm, they brought twice the purchasing power to the same housing market. Prices got bid up. And once prices adjusted upward to reflect two-income purchasing power, a single income was no longer enough to compete. Two incomes became the entry fee for middle-class housing, not a bonus on top of it. The arms race escalated and nobody won. The same dynamic played out in school districts. Because public school quality is tied to local property values, parents began outbidding each other for homes in good districts, using their combined incomes to edge out other families. The cost of access to a decent public education became embedded in the mortgage. You're not writing a tuition check, but you're paying the equivalent of one every single month, and you need both salaries to cover it. So now let's talk about what actually happens to that second income, because I want you to follow this math carefully. Imagine one partner earns $70,000 and the other earns $50,000. On paper, you're a $120,000 household. That feels like financial safety. But let's trace what actually happens to that $50,000 income. Because of how progressive tax brackets work, the second income gets layered on top of the first, which means it gets taxed at a higher marginal rate. After federal income tax, state tax, and payroll taxes, that $50,000 in gross income might become $32,000 to $35,000 in actual take-home pay. Right away, $18,000 is gone before you've spent a single cent. Now add childcare. The national average cost of daycare is around $15,000 per year per child. If you have 2 kids, that's $30,000, which by itself exceeds the after-tax value of that second income. But even with 1 child, you're already down to roughly $17,000 to $20,000 of real purchasing power. Then there's the second commute. 2 working parents almost always means 2 cars, 2 sets of insurance payments, 2 tanks of gas every week, maintenance, parking. Realistically, that's another $7,000 to $9,000 a year. And then there's what researchers call the exhaustion effect. When both parents are working full days and commuting and managing careers, something has to give at home. Cooking becomes takeout. Cleaning becomes a service you hire. Lawn care, grocery delivery, pre-made meals, these aren't luxuries for dual-income families, they're survival mechanisms. Studies consistently show that 2-income households spend significantly more on convenience and outsourced domestic labor than households where one partner manages the home. That difference can easily run another $5,000 to $10,000 per year, so let's add it all up. You started with $50,000, you lost $18,000 to taxes, you lost $15,000 to childcare for 1 child, you lost $8,000 to the second car and commute. You lost $7,000 to convenience spending driven by exhaustion. What's left? Somewhere between $2,000 and nothing. Maybe less if you live somewhere expensive. Someone is spending 40-plus hours a week away from their home and their children, grinding through traffic, running on caffeine and obligation, and the net financial contribution to the household is roughly $2,000 a year. That's less than $6 a day. And here is where the psychological trap snaps shut. Because you never see those deductions laid out clearly. What you see is the gross number on your tax return. You see $120,000 and you feel like a $120,000 household. You make decisions accordingly. You buy the house that $120,000 can qualify for. You take on the car payments that $120,000 can technically support. The bank approves you based on combined income, and you sign the papers feeling responsible and adult and like you've earned this. And you have. But what you've actually done is constructed a financial life that requires both incomes to function forever. There is no margin, there is no slack, there is no backup plan, because the backup plan is already running at full capacity just to keep the lights on. That is the trap. And it's not a trap you fall into because you're foolish or undisciplined. It's a trap that was built around you by the structural realities of housing costs, childcare costs, healthcare costs, and the way 2 incomes fundamentally change the price of everything that middle-class families compete for. So, what do you do? The shift that changes everything is deceptively simple, but emotionally very hard to execute. You stop treating the second income as permanent income and start treating it as temporary income. You structure your fixed monthly costs, your mortgage, your car payments, your non-negotiables around what one income alone can cover. The second income becomes entirely discretionary. It goes to the emergency fund first, then the retirement accounts, then the investments. The lifestyle stays modest, the fixed costs stay low, and the second income starts doing what it was always supposed to do: build actual wealth instead of fund a lifestyle that requires it to exist. This means buying less house than you technically qualify for. It means driving past the neighborhood with the better zip code. It means having an honest conversation with yourself about the difference between what you can afford on paper and what you can afford in reality, where reality includes job loss and health crises and aging parents and all the things that happen to every family eventually. The sacrifice feels real in the short term. You will watch people around you buy bigger homes and nicer cars and seem to be living more comfortable lives. But inside many of those homes, the math I just walked you through is playing out in real time. 2 incomes fully committed, no reserves, no flexibility, no backup. 1 bad quarter away from crisis. The families who build genuine wealth in the modern economy aren't the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who resist the expansion, who let their income grow without letting their fixed costs grow with it, who keep one income in reserve, even when both are flowing, who buy back their own flexibility one investment at a time until the portfolio starts generating income of its own, and suddenly, for the first time, they have choices. That is what your grandparents had on one income. Not luxury, not excess. Choices. You can't earn your way out of a trap you don't know you're in. But now you know. And knowing what the trap looks like is the first step toward building something it can't touch.